Welcome to Chapter 2 reading of the book Lockwood Co. I welcome all. I'm sure if you're confused or randomly clicked on this video, I highly suggest you go and watch the first two parts. And here's where we stopped. Chapter 2. I welcome all again, and I really hope you enjoy this. Thank you. Goodbye. Let's get started. When you go out hunting wicked spirits, it's simple things that matter most. The silver point of your rapier flashing in the dark, the iron fillings scattered on the floor, the sealed canisters of best Greek fire ready as a last resort. But tea bags, brown and fresh and plentiful, and made for preference by Pintkin brothers of Bond Street, are perhaps the simplest and best of all. Okay, they may not save your life like a sword tip or an iron circle can, and they haven't the protective power of a sudden wall of fire, but they do provide something just as vital. They help keep you sane. It's never pleasant sitting in a haunted house, waiting in the dark. The night presses in around you and the silence beats against your ears, and soon, if you're not careful, you start to see or hear things that are products of your mind. In short, you need distractions. All of us at Lockwoods have our preferences. I do a bit of drawing. George has his comics, Lockwood reads the gossip magazines, but we all like our tea and cookies, and that night the Hope's house was no exception. We found the kitchen at the far end of the house, just beyond the stairway. It was a nice enough room, neat and white and modern, and noticeably warmer than the hall. It had no supernatural traces of any kind. All was quiet. The knocking sound I heard was unaudible here, and there was no repetition of the nasty bumping on the stairs. I got the kettle going, while Lockwood lit an iron lamp and set it on the table. By its light we took off our rapiers and work belts and laid them out before us. Our belts have seven separate clips and pouches. We went through them in silence, systematic, checking the contents while the kettle whizzed and huffed away. We'd already checked everything back in the office, but we were more than happy to do it again. A girl at Rotwell's had died the previous week after forgetting to restock her magnesium flares. Outside the window, the sun was gone. Faint clouds choked the blowback sky, and mists had risen to engulf the gardens. Beyond the black headlights, lights shone in the other houses. They were near but distant, cut off from us like ships passing across deep water. We put the belts back on and checked the Velcro fastening around the rapiers. I fixed the tea and brought it to the table. Lockwood found the cookies. We sat together while the oil lamp flickered and shadows danced in the corners of the room. At last, Lockwood pulled the collar of his overcoat high around his neck. "Let's see what Mrs. Hope had to say for herself," he said. He stretched out a long, thin hand for the folder lying on the table. Lamplight glimmered darkly in his flop of hair. As I read, I checked the thermometer clipped to my belt. 59 degrees. Not warm, but roughly what you expect for an unheated house in this time of the year. I took my notebook from another pouch and jotted down the room and temperature. I also recorded details of the aerial phenomenon I'd experienced in the hall. Lockwood tossed the folder aside. "Well, that was useful." "Really?" "Really? No, I'm being ironic. Or is it sarcastic? I can never remember. Irony is clever, so you're probably being sarcastic." "What'd she say?" "Absolutely nothing of any use. She might as well written it in Greek for all the good that it does us. Here's a summary. The Hopes have lived here for 2 years. Before that, they were down in Kent somewhere. She gives a lot of irrelevant details on how happy they were. Hardly any curfews, ghost lamps almost never on, how you could go for a walk late evening and meet only your living neighbors, that sort of thing. Don't believe a word of it myself. Ken had one of the biggest outbreaks of anywhere outside of London, according to George. I sipped my tea. It's where the problem began, I thought. So they say. Anyhow, then they moved here. All fine, no troubles in the house, no manifestations of any kind. Husband changed his job, started working from home. That was 6 months ago. Still nothing funny going on. Then he fell downstairs and died. Hold it, I said. How did he fall? Tripped, apparently. What I mean is, was he alone? According to Miss Hope, he was. She was in bed. Happened during the night. She says her husband was a bit distracted in the weeks before he died. Hadn't been sleeping well. She thinks he got up to get a drink of water. I grunted non-commentally. Right. Lockwood flashed me a glance. You think she pushed him? Not necessarily. But it would provide a motive for the hauntings, wouldn't it? Husbands don't normally haunt wives except for a reason. Pity she didn't want to talk to us. I'd like to suss her out. Well, you can't always tell by looking, Lockwood said. He shrugged his narrow shoulders. Did I ever tell you about the time I met the notorious Harry Cripps? Sweet-faced man he was, soft voice and twinkly eye, good company and very plausible. He actually got me to lend him a 10, yet it turned out in the end he was the most appalling murderer who liked nothing better than to... I held up a hand. You did tell me about that. About 1,000,000 times. Oh, well, the point is, Mr. Hope could be coming back for a host of other reasons that aren't to do with vengeance. Something left undone, for instance. A will he hasn't told his wife about, or some stash of money hidden under the bed. Yeah, maybe. So the disturbances began soon after his death. A week or two later. She was mostly away from the house up till then. When she moved back, she began to be aware of an unwelcome presence. He tapped the folder. Anyway, she doesn't describe it here. She gave a full account to our receptionist over the phone. I grinned. Receptionist? George won't like that. Well, I've got his notes with me if you'd want to hear them. Go on then. Lockwood sat back exceptionally. What's she been seeing? George's notes were in an inside pocket of my jacket. I took them out and unfolded them, smoothing the paper on my knee. I scanned them briefly, clearing my throat. Are you ready? Yes. A moving shape. With great ceremony, I refolded the papers and put them away. Lockwood blinked in outrage. A moving shape? That's it? No further details? Come on, was it big, small, dark, or bright, or what? It was, and I quote, a moving shape that appeared in the back bedroom and followed me out across the landing. Word for word, that's what she told George. Lockwood dunked a forlorn cookie in his tea. Hardly the fittest description of all time. I mean, you wouldn't want to try and sketch from it, would you? No, but she's an adult. What do you expect? It's never going to be anything good. The sensations she had are more revealing. She said she felt as if something was looking for her, that it knew she was there but couldn't find her, and the thought of it finding her was more than she could bear. Well, Lockwood said, that's a little better. She sensed a purpose, which suggests a type 2. But whatever the late Mr. Hope's up to, he's not the only one at work with this house tonight. There's us as well. So, what do you say? Shall we take a look around? I drained my lug, set it carefully on the table. I think that's a very good idea. For almost an hour we toured the downstairs, briefly turning on our flashlights to check the contents of each room, but otherwise moved in near darkness. We left the oil lantern burning in the kitchen, with candles, matches, and an extra flashlight also on the table. It's a good rule to keep a well-lit place to retreat if the need arises, and having different forms of light is always advisable, in case the visitor has an ability to disrupt them. All was clear in the pantry and the dining room at the rear of the house. They had a sad, musty, rather somber air, a sense of lives suspended. Neat piles of newspapers laid curled up on the dining room table, and the scullery, a tray of shriveled onions, sprouted quietly in the darkness. But Lockwood found no visual traces anywhere, and I heard no noise. The delicate knocking sound I detected when we first entered seemed to have died away. As we walked up the hall, Lockwood gave a small shudder. I felt the hairs rise on my arm. The air was noticeably colder here. I checked the reading. 48 this time. At the front of the building there were 2 squarish rooms, one on either side of the hall. One had a television set, a sofa, 2 comfy armchairs. Here the temperature was warmer, back to the level of the kitchen. We looked and listened anyway, and found nothing. On the opposite side, a formal sitting room contained the usual chairs and cabinets arranged before large, net swathed windows and 3 enormous ferns in terracotta pots. It seemed a bit chilly. 54 degrees shone on the luminous clock. Colder than the kitchen. Might mean nothing, might mean a lot. I closed my eyes, composed myself, and prepared to listen. "Lucy, look!" Lockwood's voice hissed. "There's Mr. Hope!" My heart jolted. I spun around, rapier half drawn, only to find Lockwood stooped and casual, peering at a photo on the side table. He had his flashlight trained on it. The image hung in a little circle of floating gold. "Mrs. Hope is here as well," he added. "You idiot!" I hissed. I might have run you through."